Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning to the witnesses here today. Obviously, the FTC is our primary agency for continuing to protect consumers, promote competition, and to stop unfair and deceptive practices. So neutering the FTC, as this administration has done, should have gotten a response and outcry by everyone for the fact that this should be a bipartisan organization nominated by whoever is president at that time. I would like to begin by noting who's not here today. Commissioner Rebecca Slaughter, former Commissioner Bedoya. They're not here because President Trump illegally fired them without cause in direct violation of the Federal Trade Commission Act and the Supreme Court precedent. The FTC, which our predecessors on the Senate Committee on Interstate Commerce helped draft, say that the commissioners can only be fired for inefficiency, neglect of duty, or malfeasance in office. And yet the president fired Commissioners Slaughter and Bedoya for no reason at all. Congress designed the FTC to be an independent agency so that it would serve the public good, not the president's allies or donors or special interests. Congress rightly understood that impartial decision-making was critical to the credibility and effectiveness of the FTC. It also recognized that bipartisan perspectives would contribute to better outcomes. That is why Congress required that no more than 3 of the 5 commissioners come from one party, and commissioners were given staggered 7-year terms to ensure that they had enough time to learn the issues and promote continuity at the FTC. Despite Congress' clear direction, President Trump has eviscerated the FTC's independence and eliminated the voices of dissent, and that means for over a year there have been no Democrats on the commission. That's not much of a bipartisan commission. And yes, Mr. Chairman, we did have oversight over the FTC. In fact, we conducted meaningful oversight. One example is when in April 2021, a hearing on the full slate of FTC commissioners to oversee how the commission was combating pandemic fraud during COVID. Afterwards, the FCC took actions based on the information and returned tens of millions of dollars to taxpayers. In September, we held a hearing on 2 Republican nominees, also when the president's illegal firing. So, yes, we have had oversight. I want to make a statement for Commissioner Slaughter and explain that the commissioners are critical to pushing the commission, quote, pushing the commission to be more effective, quote, and to provide transparency and accountability in the agencies, end quote. I am concerned that one critical question Commissioner Slaughter raised in her statement, the FTC's decision to settle with a dating website service Match and OkCupid without restitution or civil penalties. These companies deceived consumers and violated their privacy, but instead of putting consumers first and insisting on restitution and penalties as part of the settlement, the FTC simply ordered Match and OkCupid not to be deceptive in the future. The FTC should be vigorous in protecting consumer privacy, the laws, and on deception. The FTC slap on the wrist settlement failed on both fronts. So I want to thank Commissioner Slaughter for attention to that issue. And I want to be clear, the problem here is not just that Commissioner Slaughter and Bedoya were illegally removed. The problem is that instead of being a consumer watchdog, the FTC is now turned into the president's lapdog. And every agency with jurisdiction should be laser focused on the affordability crisis. Grocery prices are up 30% since January 2020, outpacing both wage growth and overall inflation. In my state, a family of 4 now pays an average of $1,200 a month for groceries if they can afford it. And over the last 30 years, we've seen grocery industry become more and more consolidated, and grocery chains have used anti-competitive practices to keep competing grocery stores out of their local community. For example, Albertsons in Bellingham closed in 2016. It created a food desert in Birchwood neighborhood. Albertsons then included a land restriction when it sold its property to prevent another grocery store from actually moving in. Albertsons ultimately removed their restrictions after the Washington Attorney General opened an investigation about whether they had violated our state antitrust laws. And earlier this year, Washington State became the first state to ban restrictive covenants that ultimately raised food prices by decreasing competition in local markets. But instead of combating grocery retail prices that can raise food prices or protecting consumers from surveillance pricing, the FTC instead voluntarily dismissed a suit against Pepsi for allegedly concluding with Walmart to raise its wholesale prices for other grocery retailers. Tellingly, this dismissal came shortly after Pepsi made a major contribution to the President of the United States. What American consumers really want is the FTC to make sure that bad actors are not exploiting things, including oil prices today, and I will in the future reintroduce my legislation that gives the FTC even more authority in going after oil markets. American consumers, for the commissioners who are here, the Northwest and most of the West Coast is an isolated market, which means anytime you have a shortage, we pay extra prices. There's no relief coming. So in that isolated market, it's easier to have manipulation. And while the scams have grown exponentially over the last 5 years, the FTC has been operating without its so-called 13B authority to get money back for defrauded consumers. For more than 40 years, this was used as the FTC's return funds that were illegally taken from consumers. Between 2016 and 2020, the FTC returned more than $11 billion to consumers when they had this authority. But when the Supreme Court struck down that authority, they've returned just $2 billion to consumers. So I will be asking questions about that and continue to focus on what we can do to get the consumer protections, particularly in a market of inflation, how we can empower the FTC to be even more aggressive. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you to Ranking Member Cantwell.
And I would just like to add a statement for Commissioner Slaughter to the record.
Without objection, it will be added to the record. I will note also for the record that this hearing includes all of the currently serving commissioners on the FTC. On March 18th, 2025, President Trump fired the 2 Democrat commissioners, FTC Commissioner Rebecca Slaughter and Elvira Bedoya. Doing so immediately prompted litigation, which the President knew that it would. Since that time, Commissioner Bedoya has formally resigned and taken another job, so I cannot imagine any universe in which a former commissioner no longer serving and working elsewhere would be included in a hearing, and Commissioner Slaughter brought litigation challenging the firing. That litigation was initially successful. She prevailed in the U.S. District Court for D.C., and she also prevailed in the D.C. Circuit. But the D.C. Circuit is not the final voice, and in September 2025, Chief Justice Roberts put a stay on the D.C. Circuit's decision, which allowed President Trump's firing to stand. Supreme Court heard oral arguments in December of 2025 in Trump versus Slaughter, and a decision is expected in the next couple of months. I believe the court is likely to uphold the firing, and in particular, that the case of Humphrey's executor is going to be overturned. I think it should be overturned. As I read Article 2 of the Constitution, all executive power is vested in one President of the United States. And I think Humphrey's executor was a mistake the court made that I believe this court is going to correct. But the bottom line is neither Commissioner Bedoya nor Slaughter are current commissioners of the court. They have both been terminated, and the Supreme Court has stayed any order to the contrary. With that, I want to introduce our witnesses.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, Mr. Chairman, do you believe in a bipartisan commission, and do you believe in the nominations of presidents, or do you think in the future we're just going to continue this process and prosecute individual commissioners so that you can have a commission controlled by one party?
I don't know what subsequent presidents are going to do, either Republicans or Democrats. I don't know if they will appoint bipartisan commissions or not. What I do believe is the president had the authority to make the determination to fire those executive branch employees, just like the president, I believe, has the authority to fire any other executive branch employee. And I think the court is going to overrule Humphrey's executor and come to that conclusion.
Well, just so I could, and we'll get to our commissioners, I'm against a lot of the president's firing of various people, including thousands of scientists that could be providing us better information today. So yes, no doubt I disagree with the president on firings. Thank you.